What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? Tonight we're talking about evolution and apparently how it's scientifically impossible. We have a pastor slash apologist that has put out a video like 7 years ago. I mean, I'm pretty late to the party on this one, but I only recently found it. But apparently he's got three things, at least three that we're going to be going through tonight, that apparently scientifically prove evolution to be impossible. So we're going to find out what those things are during the video portion of tonight, and I guess we will see you heathens right after this intro. Like I said, I was perusing, certain search terms or whatnot on YouTube, and I found this guy, and amazingly enough, it was after I had posted the poll for all of the Skeptic Mafia members. And because I was like, shit, everybody wants scientifically proving evolution wrong, and I'm like, or impossible, and I'm like, where the fuck am I going to find that? Because I kind of pulled it out of my ass. And then lo and behold, this fucking video. I have cut it down to 8 minutes and 31 seconds. Originally, this section was 15 minutes long, but I was able to cut out almost half of the video by just speeding it up a little bit, and you really, you could tell, but if it wasn't for the sound distortion, you wouldn't be able to tell it was sped up, because he's Southern, and like me, he speaks slow. We got another super chat from Arduin. Brocephus 2020. He may not be here, but it's still better for everyone. I agree. Brocephus would be better for everybody. All right. So, let's get to this video. He's got some scientific proof against evolution, and we're going to find out what in the fuck that is.
The Earth's moon has been confirmed by United States astronauts who landed on it and studied it by observable science to be 100% dead. Nothing could survive on it. Even if astronauts went to the moon and brought everything they needed to build a man-made lake and supply water for it, it would be dead. Nothing living could survive. This is because it takes a multitude of factors all working together in precise balance for life to exist.
Quentin Van Boeven did a super chat saying, "Tell us when you do that, I sue for cruel and unusual punishment." Okay, I will let you know. Don't sue me though, sue Brocephus. You gotta make sure you put it right on the sue document. The multiple documents for suing somebody. I will make sure I have a lawyer.
Scientists call this irreducible complexity, where various parts must work together to make life or any object, such as a machine, work.
So, here's a funny thing. He's saying that it's irreducibly complex, that, it takes so many things, so many factors for life to arise naturally. Or not naturally, but for life to even exist. Because he pointed out how on the moon, it's completely dead. And apparently we sent astronauts there to scientifically interpret that from the fucking moon. I think anybody could have told you that from just looking through a goddamn microscope. Or not microscope, telescope. But he's saying that it's irreducibly complex for life to even exist. And that takes it one step further than most people, because most creationist apologists will go like, oh, well, bacterial flagellum, that's irreducibly complex. This guy's like, hold on, hold my whiskey. All life is irreducibly complex. We got a couple more super chats. One for Teresa Ferris says, which diploma mill of Christian college is he standing in front of? Probably his own ministry. My guess would be his own church. I'm not sure. It didn't really say. Then we got Uhan Roderick says, I feel left out. Everyone else is super chatting. I agree. You probably do feel left out. Thank you for the super chats. You can't tell, for every super chat, I'm doing like a pretty big swig of my whiskey here. So if you guys want me to get really drunk by the end of this, you might want to super chat some more.
If one part is removed, the whole will not work. On Earth, if there was no gravity, or not enough, or too much, if there was no dust, or not enough, or too much, if there was no oxygen, or not enough, or too much, if there was no water, or not enough, or too much, life on Earth would cease. In the human body, all of us know that it takes each organ, the brain, heart, lungs, kidneys, liver, etc., trillions of cells and their DNA molecules, millions of nerves, brain waves, skin, sinew, muscle, bones, blood, etc., all healthy and working together to sustain life.
Okay. Johan Roderick said drink, and then Michelle Foster said take a drink, bish. Damn, guys. Okay. So, he lays out how all of these things have to work in order for the human body to work, right? Or anything else like that. And apparently that's irreducibly complex. The human body in general is irreducibly complex to this guy, which I have to say is rather myopic, because the evolutionary theory doesn't state that humans popped into existence out of just thin air. That would be fucking religion, right? So that's one big mistake he's making here, is that evolution somehow pops things into existence all at once. He doesn't get the gradual buildup of functionality. He doesn't understand how evolution actually works. He doesn't understand the small changes that happen generationally over millions and millions of years that build up to the point of humans. So yeah, if you take out the sinew in our bones and you take out our heart or you take out our brain, we're obviously not going to work. But that's also that also doesn't say anything about evolution. It doesn't disprove evolution. It doesn't make us irreducibly complex, because there are organisms here on the planet that don't have as sophisticated central nervous systems as we do. They don't have quote unquote brains, and they work just fine. Just look at fucking amoebas and other single-celled life forms.
Not to mention outside necessities such as food, water, shelter, oxygen. And a very simple machine, such as a pencil sharpener, all the parts have to function to be in the right place to perform their respective tasks for the pencil sharpener to work. If you remove one component, it will not function. In other words, you cannot reduce its complexity without destroying its function entirely.
That's very important for irreducible complexity, okay? Because they say that it destroys the function entirely, right? But with, like, for instance, the bacterial flagellum, we've been able to take out proteins that are integral to the bacterial flagellum, and pretty much the only thing that it affects is how much it can move. It doesn't destroy the functionality. The bacterial flagellum doesn't go away, and we've actually been able to reverse engineer the bacterial flagellum, and it all traces back to one particular gene that could that was duplicated multiple times in multiple different ways, and it ends up producing the bacterial flagellum. So he's completely wrong with all of this. What he's making the argument akin to, oh, if you take the flywheel out of an engine, then the engine won't run. It's like, okay, that doesn't make the engine irreducibly complex. There were simpler engines that existed way before, like a V8 or whatever else. There were simpler engines that exist prior to that and alongside that, and that's exactly what we see with biological evolution.
The components necessary for life in a human being are connected and necessary, just as the components necessary for life on Earth to exist are connected, each needing to work and work together for life to continue.
Well, yeah, but you have to understand, like, regardless of how they function now, just because, you know, they function together doesn't mean that they always function together. Like, for instance, this is a lot, and he's going to get into this, I guess, in the next section too, but with how we went from prokaryotic to eukaryotic. And I'll explain that there, but just because, you know, something exists and it has these things that work together within it, like with eukaryotic cells, doesn't mean that they can't exist, like, outside of it by themselves.
Even more amazing, though we sometimes take it for granted, is that the components necessary for life in a human being and life on Earth are also connected and necessary for life to exist.
Well, I mean, they are connected, but just because, all of these things came together in this one particular area, and everything, kind of got set up for life to exist here, and life exists in our form here in these conditions, doesn't mean that life can't exist in other conditions, or that life can't arise in some other way. You just simply can't say that. You also can't say that it's irreducibly complex just because our life exists on this planet given our conditions. Like, that's not how anything works.
This world supplies just the right amounts of sunlight, clean water, oxygen, food, and the ability for the human body to be sustained and nourished by these essential elements. These are supplied by God day by day and moment by moment.
Jesus Christ, honey, did you know that God supplies our food every fucking day? He must drop that shit out of the sky just every fucking day. He drops an orange down and is like, eat it, peasants. And we just don't know. Like, we think that they grow off trees, but nope, God shits them out of his asshole from the sky. Yeah, drop us a lottery fucking thing. Like, just, huh? Jackpot. Drop us a jackpot on our front lawn there, God. Just drop a big deuce on there of jackpots.
Without which human or any life could not exist.
Every living thing, therefore, had to be completely created by God at one time, as the Holy Bible proclaims.
No, every living thing did not have to be completely created by God at one time. And yeah, the Bible claims it, but there are plenty of other religions that claim it as well. Like, your statement there would also prove Islam to be correct and Judaism to be correct, which, I mean, Judaism is kind of the root for both Christianity and that. But, I mean, you're saying that the Holy Bible proclaims it, but you also have to admit that the Quran claims that too. So does that mean that Allah, which, I mean, I know is just another word for God in Islam, but you get my point. Like, you're not providing us anything unique that should point us to the God of the Bible. You're just saying, oh, God did it, which is a God of the gaps argument, and what all creationist argument really boiled down to. No, it fucking doesn't. Specify
The design of
complexity.
life may also be described in terms of information. The scientific name is called specified complexity. Specified complexity can be described as the information content of any arrangement and its size in bits of the shortest algorithm, computer program, or code required to generate that arrangement. The data at the core of life is found in the DNA molecules of each living thing.
So, DNA definitely contains the blueprints for whatever organism is there. But that doesn't mean that it's some kind of, like, actual, like, digital code or anything like that. It's not written in a language or anything of that sort. And I know where he's going with this, that basically it's some kind of code that could only come by through a creator, right? And that's just ridiculous, because it's not a code. They're chemicals. They're governed by the laws of chemistry and physics and all that other kind of shit. So him saying, oh, well, God had to write that code, is just another God of the gaps argument. It's just saying, oh, well, God had to do that because I'm too dumb to understand how it could have come about naturally, which we've been able to show how it could have come about naturally. Let's see, got a couple of super chats here from Uhan Roderick. I proclaim that I am now God. And then Arduin, in that case, I think that a few years ago I got a gift from Satan instead. Stares at cat. Woo! Yeah, James Downard, down in the comments right now, him and Jackson Wheat have a book coming out called The Rocks Were There. Whenever that comes out, I'm definitely going to be interviewing both of those guys and talking about it and seeing if I can get people to buy it, because I'm buying that shit quick. I don't know if it's out yet, guys, but I'm definitely going to be pushing it hard because you guys deserve it. Anyways, okay, let's go ahead.
Since its discovery in 1953, human DNA has been decoded, which has incredibly revealed that DNA molecules actually store, carry, and possess information, some 3 billion genetic letters in the form of a 4-character digital code.
Here's the thing. 4-character digital code? I really don't understand what you're supposed to mean by that. Because most of the time, when you talk about digital code, you're talking about binary code, right? Zeros and ones. Even when you're talking about, especially when you're talking about computers. Computers are binary. You either have a 1 or a 0, and then you have a central processor that interprets all those ones and zeros to be these operations that happen. And they're very basic operations, right? So I don't know what you mean by 4-character digital code. In like digital electronics, there is like a tri-state component, so that gives you 3, but there's never been 4. Like, that just doesn't exist in digital fucking code. Oh, sorry, hold on. We had Quentin Van Boeven that says, this guy hurts my brain more than most creationists. Yeah. That's what this is for. So thank you for giving me more whiskey.
DNA has the same relevant properties as an astoundingly complex language. A genetic language, such as our human bodies retained, must be designed and created. It is not rational to consider any other explanation.
Begging the question right there, because you're automatically assuming that all of life forms have to be created just because you don't understand how they could have arisen naturally. We have more than proven that the amino acids and life could have arranged itself. Also, this breaches on abiogenesis, which all creationists really do. They have to include abiogenesis in a discussion about evolution. And just because we don't know every single step of abiogenesis does not necessarily mean that God had to be the one to do it. In fact, if you follow like a Bayesian analysis of what the most probable answer is, it would be a natural solution to the problem. That life just arose naturally because that's how it's always happened. So you automatically assuming that God had to be the one to create, all of this complex information is just ridiculous, because we've been able to show how this complex information or these complex structures, these chemicals, could arise naturally. And again, he's making chemistry out to be some kind of computer program, and that's just not how it works.
Yet, somehow, according to evolutionists, contrary to all evidence and reason, the amazingly complex genetic information found in each cell of and every living thing's makeup is not designed and created. I would only ask, could the Microsoft software program we use for this program be produced by evolution? I doubt if Billy Gates would accept that idea, since his company designed and produced the software. He probably wants to get paid for this product, since even evolutionists might admit that the Microsoft Word program just didn't appear out of thin air or arise from the elements that made up a CD-ROM and over time randomly formed Microsoft Word.
To believe that a CD-ROM could evolve over billions of years from various elements in the Earth is crazy, because it is impossible. But to believe that the computer program in the CD-ROM could evolve is insane.
I would agree. If anybody believes that evolution would produce Microsoft Word as far as it arising naturally, then yeah, that is pretty fucking insane. But guess what? That's not what evolutionary theory says. That's not anything that evolutionary theory implies. So you're just strawmanning the evolutionary theory at that point, because that's not how biological evolution works. Now, if you want to talk about how Microsoft Word has evolved, you could talk about that, because you could talk about how word processing programs evolved over time and got to the point of, what they look like now. I mean, you could talk about that, but that's not biological evolution. Biological evolution happens in a very specific way, and for you to bring up like Microsoft Word or any kind of digital code or any kind of physical material that's obviously been created by humans is just a straw man attack against evolution, and it doesn't do anything to it. We got a new pure free thinker, the Random Explorer. Awesome to see you here, Random Explorer. Huh? Thank you.
Werner Gitt, a professor of information systems, put it directly, quote, "It has never been shown that a coding system and semantic information could originate by itself through matter. The information theorems predict that this will never be possible. A purely material origin of life is thus ruled out."
Okay, so this guy, he brings up a lot of people in this. He quotes them almost as like a argument from authority type thing. Like, oh, look, this professor of information systems, he said that it's definitely ruled out, that material origin for life is ruled out. So why wouldn't it be ruled out? But this guy is an intelligent design proponent. I've actually got, I do believe in the description of this, I have a lot of different links, complex specified information. I've got a link in there, irreducible complexity. And I've also got his profile from Wikipedia in there. And I mean, he's pretty much just an intelligent design proponent. So of course he's going to think that life couldn't have arisen naturally. But what he's saying here is that these information theorems predict that this will never be possible. It's like, okay, well, what does the actual evidence show us? The actual evidence shows us that natural processes will eventually produce life. In a nutshell, I mean, that's what the evidence actually shows us.
Unquote. When one considers life, one must realize that life consists of infinite complexity, and because of this fact, life must have been created by an infinitely wise and great creator.
An infinitely wise and great creator. Is this guy sucking Donald Trump dick before he's even president? That really feels like something one of Donald Trump's lackeys would say. It's like, oh, he is infinitely wise. Very, very big words from that man. Oh, yes. But this entire sentiment here is just bogus. Because right now, we don't have explanation for, like, or not that we don't have an explanation. We don't have every single step, or we don't have a fully I guess, fleshed out idea of abiogenesis. But that's also not evolution. We understand how evolution works. Okay, we have evidence that supports it. So if this is an attack against evolution, you're just plain wrong.
The amount of information that could be stored in a volume of human DNA the size of the head of a pin is 500 times as tall as the distance from the Earth to the Moon, each with a different yet specific content. It is an absolute impossibility for the information content of a human being to come into being by random chance, mutation, and natural selection.
Citation needed on that one, motherfucker, because I have never found any kind of scientific study that says that there is a absolute 0% possibility that life could have arisen naturally or anything like that. So I'm gonna need a citation on that, because you saying that it's impossible needs to have some kind of like evidence to back up that particular statement. So until you can provide that evidence, that's just fucking wrong. So I would love to see your evidence, though. No, it doesn't. Specified fucking complexity. When we get to DNA, we got Teresa Ferris, who says, "Who else had to look up irreducible?" Well, I had to look up irreducible complexity when I first started engaging in that particular discussion. But I mean, irreducible just means that you can't reduce it further. Yeah.
DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, the double helix building block of life that forms like two twisted circular stairways, offers irrefutable proof that evolution is impossible. This tiny DNA molecule is so complex that it contains all of the genetic information for the various parts of our bodies, as well as for every cell of the estimated 100 trillion cells that make up one human being.
Well, right, but just because something's complex doesn't mean that God had to create it. We've been able to show how RNA would have formed first and then eventually would have come DNA. And it's all chemicals. Like the DNA is a chemical. They want to call it a computer code or some kind of thing like that, but it's really just a chemical. And so how it reacts as a chemical is going to change in the different configurations. So just because there's a lot of the chemical in, in like the nucleus and the chromosomes and everything like that, how tightly wound they are and everything, doesn't mean that God had to be the one to create it.
DNA are very complex molecular entities within cells. They are interrelated with other cells that work with the rest of the body to maintain life.
Okay, so I had to do a lot of pre-research for this before I started drinking. So what he's talking about here, like how they have to function together and everything like that, that kind of broaches on the whole subject of how multicellular life developed. And basically, we saw multicellular life starting to develop about 3 billion years ago with these microbial mats that would develop. And then, of course, later on, about 1 billion years later or so, you actually had multicellular organisms starting to arise. Some say that the sponges were the first true multicellular organisms, and then, of the animal kingdom. And then, what is it, like three? Hold on, I got my little thing. Sponges considered by many. I'm reading from sciencemag.org. I get the link in the description. It says sponges considered by many to be the most primitive living animal, may date back 750 billion years. And then there are the ediacarans that were common about 570 million years ago. Many researchers consider them to be the definitive animal fossils. And then there's actual fossil spores that suggest multicellular plants evolved from algae at least 470 million years ago. So we have all of this fossil evidence that points towards a natural progression of single cells working together and functioning together, and then eventually becoming multicellular life. So just because something works together now doesn't mean that it always worked together before. Also, how I mentioned before that we saw, multicellular life start to form 3 billion years ago or so, the fact that we've been finding a lot of genes that are associated with like multicellular animals in single-celled organisms, that is a really big indication that how it actually happened was that these organisms evolved, and they evolved these genes which either didn't help them or were detrimental to them as a single-celled creature. But once they started working together, they were beneficial. So anytime that you're discussing evolution, you really just have to keep one basic concept in mind, and that's, the fact that evolution is propelled forward through the changes or the mutations being beneficial to the creature in its environment, right? And so with these changes happening in these single-celled organisms, and once they started working together and they started building, these multicellular organisms, those particular changes that they had prior to becoming multicellular organisms, they would have helped them survive and blossom, into the diversity of life that we have. So him saying that, because things work together now, like all the cells in your body work together with such specificity, like red blood cells do one job, and your pancreatic cells, they do another job, and your brain cells, they do another job, nerve cells, they do another job. Like, just because we have cells that have these specific jobs doesn't mean that they all had to arise at the same time. It would have gradually changed over time.
Their discovery is proof that cells which make up a living being have never existed separated from the same living being and still be alive. Each cell must be interrelated with every other cell in a living being. It would then be impossible for a single simple cell to evolve into a living entity, as evolution theorizes, due to the vast complexity of one cell and their interrelationship of each cell to the other.
This is not actually supported by science, this particular statement right here. Like I said before, this is closely related to how prokaryotic cells evolved into eukaryotic cells. How that happened was that there were mitochondria-like single-celled organisms that invaded and infected these larger single-celled organisms, these larger prokaryotic cells, and then they worked together. And then eventually they just became part of that organism. They became eukaryotic cells. And so the fact that he thinks that single-celled organisms only exist in, I guess, a prokaryotic state instead of a eukaryotic state, which seems to be what he's kind of implying here, is just ridiculous, and it's not supported by science at all. But that's how it would have happened for multicellular life as well. The single-celled organisms would work together, benefit each other, and eventually, over time, it would just be this multicellular organism. And yeah, Robert Adset, he puts it very plainly, argument from incredulity. Exactly. He doesn't know how it works. He doesn't know how organisms, multicellular organisms formed over time. So therefore, God had to do it. It's all ultimately a God of the gaps argument because they're too fucking dumb to actually look at the science and what it says.
DNA proves there never existed such a thing as a simple cell, nor a living creature whose cells did not genetically connect with each other.
DNA proves there never existed a simple cell. So, like, I think he's saying, I don't think that he's saying that single-celled organisms don't exist. I don't want to think that he means that. Because I don't know what he thinks, like, germs and shit are, but damn. I think that he means that, like, multicellular organisms were never once simple, like, single-celled organisms, right? I think that's what he means, but also that's proven wrong by the fossil record and shit. Single cells sticking together can become too big for single-cell predators to swallow them, a very obvious survival advantage. Yes, it is. Teresa Perez, Jesus fuck, what did this guy just say about simple cells? I don't know.
A DNA molecule is 2/millionths of a millimeter thick and only visible with the aid of a powerful electron microscope. Yet, if you stretch the double helix in just one molecule, it would measure about 6.5 feet long. All of the DNA in one human body linked together and stretched out would reach to the moon and back.
I actually had to look that up. That's true, but I don't think that, like, in a single cell in your body, the DNA... Excuse me. I don't think that in a single cell, like everything that I've found on that particular topic, it says that it's on the magnitude of centimeters, not like 6.5 feet. Like, I think 1.8 centimeters is what I saw for, like, DNA stretched out. But in any case, it definitely will go to the moon and back and more times over. Like, if you had all of the DNA in every single cell of your body, that's how far it would be stretched out. But I mean, again, they're very they're micro, like, they're beyond microscopic. Cadence says, fast fact, if you took all the DNA from a human and stretched it out in a straight line, they would die. That's a good point. I think I've seen a similar thing with elephants. It's like, did you know that if you stacked elephants on top of each other until they reached the moon, they would die? Catherine asks, are you talking at 1.5x speed to match the video? No, generally I speak kind of slow, and maybe it's just because I've been having the whiskey, because you guys keep making me drink whiskey, that I'm talking faster. I've also tried to formulate my thoughts and then get it all out in a short amount of time.
To portray the smallest life form as a simple living organism, as evolution asserts, is proven an absurd impossibility. At the beginning of the 21st century, scientists are uncovering and putting into everyday use information about DNA molecules. An unidentified single DNA molecule, for example, found at a crime scene, can be identified as coming from a plant, an animal, or a human being. Every person, therefore, has DNA that can be identified as human. More than this, each individual has DNA that is unique only to him. Just as each person has one-of-a-kind fingerprints, where no two individual fingerprints are alike, so each person has one-of-a-kind DNA.
Except for twins, obviously. Although, twins can have different epigenetic information, which causes them to eventually look different. But for the most part, I mean, twins are genetically identical, or triplets would be genetically identical, unless you're fraternal twins, and then you might not look exactly the same. I think that's how it works. Like maternal twins are generally genetically identical. Fraternal twins would not necessarily be identical. Oh fuck! We got Uhan Roderick and Michelle Foster telling me to drink. Well, Michelle says chug, chug, chug.
Molecules are found in every tissue of the human body. A person's DNA are found in his blood as well as his skin, his saliva, his hair, everything.
Did you guys know that? I mean, you have unique DNA, and therefore God had to create you. Holy shit! God had to create us because we all have unique DNA. I mean, that whole entire statement just shows how much he doesn't know about DNA. Obviously, everybody's going to have different DNA, except for those that are like identical. You know, I just, it's just so fucking crazy.
DNA profiling can identify one person exclusively from all other people on the face of the earth. Human DNA molecules are very stable and can withstand significant environmental challenges, which enables forensic scientists to obtain identifying information from very old biological evidence. These reasons are why DNA profiling is a vital component in criminal investigations, enabling the police to not only arrest the guilty, but release the innocent. DNA molecules make up the fundamental building block for the human body's entire genetic framework. Scientists now know that the genetic information contained in each cell of the human body is roughly equivalent to a library of 4,000 volumes. If we multiply that by between 100 trillion cells, we can begin to appreciate the vast complexity of a single human being.
Good for fucking us, I guess. I really don't. Basically, okay, so a lot of pseudoscientific ideas, I'm not going to call them theories, a lot of them play the big numbers game, right? Oh, look, this has a really big number, therefore it either is impossible or had to be done by a creator. Which impossible is more the flat earthers talking about, you know, the various speeds of the universe, our solar system and all that kind of stuff. But creationists even do it with evolution because it's like, oh, there's such a low probability of life arising naturally. Like, it's such a huge number, like 3 to the 934th power, like 1 over that to the probability. Oh, fuck. I'm fucking up so much. Dahlia, 1998, still too slow. Even sped up, it's taking forever. I know. Oh, and then Quentin said, we making GE do shots? If so, drink. So, but basically, they're just playing a big number game. And they're saying, look at these big numbers. You see how big the numbers are? They seem pretty ridiculous, huh? And pretty impossible. That means that they are impossible.
According to molecular biologist Michael Denton, each cell consists of genetic information that contains, quote, artificial languages and their decoding systems, memory banks for information storage and retrieval, elegant control systems regulating the automated assembly of parts and components, error, fail-safe, and proofreading devices utilized for quality control, assembly processes involving the principle of prefabrication and modular construction, and a capacity of replicating its entire structure within a matter of a few hours, end quote. Arthur Lee Strobel wrote, quote, the 6 feet...
Okay, so Michael Denton, I have his profile in the description as well too. Michael Denton is a intelligent design proponent, and I really like. Let me go back to see what he said. Hold on. All of that shit does not matter when it comes to evolutionary theory. Basically, he's saying, "Hey, look at this complex system. Complex systems don't arise naturally. Therefore, God had to be the one to do it." And it all still just boils down to a God of the gaps argument. He's saying, oh, look, God had to do this because we don't know how it was done naturally. So therefore God. And that's what every single creationist argument boils down to. Any quote like this right here boils down to, oh, we don't understand, therefore God.
Structure within a matter of a few hours, end quote. Arthur Lee Strobel wrote, quote, "The 6 feet of DNA coiled inside every one of our body's 100 trillion cells contains a 4-letter chemical alphabet that spells out precise assembly instructions for all the proteins from which our bodies are made. No hypothesis has come close to explain how information got into biological matter by naturalistic means." The impact of DNA on the...
Okay. First of all, bringing Lee Strobel up for anything, I guess, other than the resurrection, I feel is just laughable. I mean, he's already pretty laughable when it comes to the resurrection shit. But for evolution, I think it's even more laughable that you bring up Lee Strobel. He's not an authority in anything. Like, I understand the other fucks that you've brought on here, right? Michael Denton, that Git guy. Like, I understand their purpose here, but why Lee Strobel? He's an apologist that has really bad arguments for the historical resurrection of a dead Jew in 1st century Judea. So, I don't understand why you think he would be a good person to trot out in this particular situation. That's not a good person to trot out. But also, he's completely wrong about that. He doesn't understand the science. He doesn't... Let's go back to what he said. Hold on. Just because, like, DNA coiled inside of everyone's body is 100 trillion cells. This is just playing the big numbers game then. No hypothesis has come close to explaining how information got into biological matter by naturalistic means. I disagree. We have explanations for how DNA could have arose naturally. We have those explanations. Just because he doesn't want to accept them, because he doesn't understand the science behind them, doesn't mean that he is correct. It's a personal incredulity argument, and it's still leading us towards a God of the gaps.
Biological matter by naturalistic means. The impact of DNA on the evolution theory was concisely given by Spencer Lampiris. Quote, "The belief that various amino acids accidentally got together in primordial slime and somehow formed a single cell is typical of a movement justifying a failed theory in the hope to ensnare others to live as if God does not exist." End quote.
I like the random quote here from somebody. Because he's an all-American football player, Army veteran, firefighter, captain. Awesome. Great. But I don't understand why we should take this guy, Spencer Lampiris. Like, I don't know why he is important enough to, like, bring this up. Let's see, Lampiris. Let's see. Yeah, he doesn't really come up with anything. This is just a random fucking person that, like, believes in God and is a creationist and is like, yep, that means that it's not true. Let's see. The belief that various amino acids accidentally got together in primordial slime and somehow formed a single cell is typical of a movement justifying a failed theory in the hope to ensnare others to live as if God does not exist. This has a fundamental misunderstanding of evolutionary science because there are plenty of evolutionary scientists that also believe in God. Evolution does not want to hide God from anybody. It has nothing to do with God. It has everything to do with the biological life as it exists now on Earth. Like, that's all. It has no say in whether or not a God exists. So you just randomly bringing this fucking up here just shows that you want to paint evolutionary theory as some kind of anti-Christian or anti-God idea. And it's simply not. I mean, true, it shows that your Bible is not completely correct. It's not inerrant like you always say. So I guess for you it seems like an attack, but it's really not a fucking attack on you.
Others to live as if God does not exist. End quote.
This significant discovery with its subsequent findings completely destroys evolution and all so-called neo-Darwinian, godless theories of the creation of the world.
Oh my god, that should be the subtitle of some kind of evolution book. The neo-Darwinian godless world, or what the fuck did he say?
Evolution and all so-called neo-Darwinian, godless theories of the creation of the world.
Neo-Darwinian godless theories of creation of the world. I'm gonna name a book after that. That's gonna be the name of my like totally non-expert book on evolution. It's gonna be the neo-Darwinian godless theories of the world.
It also makes it obvious that ape DNA could not evolve into human DNA, nor could humanity evolve with DNA unique to each individual human being who ever lived.
Citation needed. Also, chromosome 2 in apes actually proves you completely wrong in this particular instance. For one thing, humans are still part of the great ape family, and we know this because of chromosome 2. Because in chromosome 2, what we find is these end-to-end telomere-like things. We find 2 centromeres, and then we find genetic coding that only appear, like the telomeres that appear in the middle of an arm. That indicates an end-to-end fusion of 2 chromosomes in the other apes, because the other apes have 1 more chromosome than we do. So it only makes sense that there was an end-to-end fusion there that was caused by evolution. So you saying that there's no connection between humans and other apes, that's just ridiculous, and it's disproven by science. We got Arduin, who says, oh no, a football player who probably got hit in the head 2,000 times said God is real. That settles it. God's real. Evolution's false.
Christian evangelist Billy Graham well said, quote, when we look into a microscope, we know there is a God. And when we look into a telescope, we know there is a God.
Okay. I don't understand what the fuck that has to do with anything. I get it. Christians, whenever they look at the world, they find evidence of God. No matter how many natural explanations we find, they're still going to believe that God did it. And that's perfectly fine, but you can't also say that evolution has been proven false because Billy Graham said that some shit. Like, Billy Graham hasn't proven anything false. He has no bearing in this particular conversation. You're just trotting out different people that people are going to be like, oh shit, Billy Graham said that? Oh my fucking Christ. Well, fuck me. Evolution is false because Billy Graham says that we look into microscopes and we find gold. Sorry, I didn't mean to wake you up, honey.
Unquote. Does honest, observable science prove evolution? No. It unequivocally disproves it.
I disagree. Scientific evidence definitely proves evolution to be an actual thing. So, I would need citations for the, like, I get that you're proving evolution to be debunked or whatnot, or proving it impossible or whatever with these particular proofs, but the first two were not. DNA is not a proof against evolution. So, I mean, you still have a lot of work ahead of yourself here.
Despite being aware of specified complexity, irreducible complexity, and the complexity of DNA molecules, the reason given by evolutionary scientists for the creation of the universe, the Earth, and life itself is the Big Bang Theory and billions of years of undirected, random evolution.
Okay, so again, this is common. Like we talked about before, they love to convolute abiogenesis with evolution, but now he's doing Big Bang and evolution, because they always think that it was like there was a huge bang, like a huge explosion, and then everything popped out fully formed. The Earth popped out fully formed, the Sun popped out fully formed, Saturn popped out fully formed, everything like that. But that's just simply not the case. There were billions upon billions of years prior to the Earth even forming, but after the Earth formed and the first life, showed up, then billions of years of evolution happened. So, I mean, yeah, that is the naturalistic explanation for it. That's what we have evidence to suggest. It explains far better our reality than just God did it. So, yeah, I don't see the point in you misrepresenting evolutionary theory by convoluting it or conflating it with the Big Bang Theory, but still, that nothing you said actually shows that it's ridiculous to think, because given enough time and enough sample space, the highly unlikely will 100% happen.
Unbelievable.
Oh, boom, green check mark, done. All right. right, heathens. Well, that's going to be it for tonight, at least for the video portion. We still have the Skeptic Mafia portion to go through. But I do want to say to everybody that's going to be heading out right now, if you will, if you're not subscribed, definitely subscribe. Consider becoming part of the Skeptic Mafia. Smash that like button. And as always, stand up and use your voice. Especially with anti-vaxxers. They need to be slapped. They need to have some sense slapped into them. Hold on. The lawyers are telling me don't actually assault anybody because that might get us sued or something. I don't know. Anyways, but we will see you heathens next Friday with a live stream, or Monday if you want to watch just the regular uploads during the week. We're about to go into the Skeptic Mafia comments, but if you're leaving out, I will see you heathens later.